Secretary Noem, are you familiar with Section 872 of the Homeland Security Act of 2002?
It sounds familiar, sir. You'll have to remind me the topic. Yes.
Well, Section 872 requires you, as Secretary, to provide a 60-day notice to Congress
yes.
of any creation, deletion, consolidation, or alteration of organizations within the department that are not required in statute, which must include an explanation for the rationale behind any charges. It also prohibits you from making—
Senator Gary Peters blew the door open. One simple question: why didn't you follow federal law and notify Congress? And Kristi Noem's scripted answers fell apart instantly. Once Peters laid out the real numbers, the wall costs, the Guantanamo transfers, the gutted DHS offices, it became obvious. The math didn't add up, and the excuses weren't holding. This wasn't debate. It was a real-time fact check, and Noem had no place to hide. If you believe accountability matters, hit subscribe and let's get into it.
Thank you again, Secretary Noem, for being here. I just want to follow up briefly with Chairman Paul's questions about the cost of the wall, the billions of dollars that are going to be put forward. We do have to have accurate numbers so that we could look at that for funding it. But I would hope you also take a look at all of the cost of a wall, because there are a lot of other secondary kinds of defenses you have to put forward. I was at the wall. I've been with security folks. They tell me that a lot of the cartels have designed very sophisticated technologies to get over the wall. They're called ladders and they're called ropes. So a wall doesn't really do the job if there's not a lot of other background technologies there. So you just can't put out a cost for the wall. That's money that's not going to be as effective without everything else. So let's have a discussion about that. For the first time in U.S. history, the federal government, at the direction of President Trump, is moving immigrants apprehended and detained in the United States on civil immigration charges to Naval Station at Guantanamo Bay, which I know you're very familiar with. In March, I traveled to Guantanamo Bay with several colleagues to have a firsthand examination of the detention operations underway. And I certainly have serious concerns about the cost involved there. To date, can you tell us the total cost for detaining individuals at Guantanamo Bay?
You want the cost per individual?
Do you have that?
I do not have that with me today, sir. I can get that for you.
Well, I do have a number. Do you know how much it costs to hold an immigrant in ICE detention facility in the United States? Do you have that number?
Now, are you talking per day? 100 and I believe the last estimate that I got was $142 a day, around in that approximately, per day.
Yeah, but it's close to what I'm understanding. I understand it's $165 per day, so it's in the range. I'm still waiting for detailed financial information from this administration from my time to Guantanamo Bay. In fact, a letter with Ranking Member, or Chairman Paul and the Ranking Member together, we wanted more information on the costs there. When I was there, the 2-month cost estimate for operations was $43 million when we were down there talking to the officials there. And that does not include transportation to and from the island. We find that people are sent to the island and then they're sent back to the United States again before they're sent out. I'm not sure why we have all those costs. We have plenty of ICE facilities to keep them here. Why you have to send them there and back. And on the day that I visited, there were 87 people in custody. And my understanding is that's a pretty normal number. At that time, at least. So my back of the napkin calculation, we're waiting for your numbers, is that it's costing about $100,000 a day to keep someone at Guantanamo Bay. Man, this is like ripe for Doge. Why is Doge not down there? We're spending $100,000 a day to keep someone at Guantanamo, and we fly them down there, we keep them there a while, then we fly them back to the United States. Or we could keep them here for $165 a day. I think that's kind of outrageous. So, I'm concerned by the staggering cost of this, and I would hope, Secretary, you could commit providing this committee a detailed breakdown of the total cost of that operation there. There were just a sea of empty beds. There was all sorts of security folks and nobody in those beds, which is why it's so expensive. So Chairman Paul will probably use this on his Festivus report later, I'm sure, of outrageous government spending, and I'll look forward to seeing that. Secretary Noem, are you familiar with Section 872 of the Homeland Security Act of 2002?
It sounds familiar, sir. You'll have to remind me the topic. Yes.
Well, Section 872 requires you, as Secretary, to provide a 60-day notice to Congress of
yes.
any creation, deletion, consolidation, or alteration of organizations within the department that are not required in statute, which must include an explanation for the rationale behind any charges. It also prohibits you from making any changes to offices in the status. So my question for you is, why have you not provided notice to Congress of the changes you are making at the department? And will you be doing so in the near future? And will you include intended reduction in forces in that? For example, you've already terminated virtually the whole Civil Rights and Civil Liberties Office staff without any communication to Congress about your intent. And the only letter yesterday claiming all of the statutory responsibilities would be met, you sent a letter, but it conflicts certainly with the whistleblower disclosure that I received last week. So please explain to the committee why you are not following this law.
Well, Senator, we are following that law. Those offices that you referenced are still open and functioning and providing their duties as required, but they have been right-sized. Many times the Office of Civil Rights and Civil Liberties, or the Ombudsman Office, which you and I visited about before, had grown quite expansive. They were used as a political tool, suing and attacking each other and censoring individuals and not doing the job for which they were created. So we've right-sized them, put them back on mission, and if there would be an instance to where notification is required, I certainly will follow that.
Peters didn't just challenge Secretary Noem. He pulled back the curtain on an entire governing philosophy built on spectacle instead of substance. From the moment he began, you could feel the shift in the room. Noem delivered the usual tough talk on immigration, the oversized numbers, the confident posture meant to signal control. But Peters walked in with something far more powerful: facts, timelines, dollar amounts, and the federal statutes she was supposed to be following. And when oversight is rooted in facts, not theatrics, political branding evaporates fast. First, he dismantled the border wall narrative that's been recycled across countless press conferences. Because when you place the administration's $46 billion request under real scrutiny, it becomes obvious that the math doesn't align with reality. Peters didn't need hyperbole. All he needed was the simplest question: show me the numbers. In that moment, the talking points collapsed. That's the thing about accountability. It doesn't shout. It just demands clarity, and clarity leaves no place to hide. But he didn't stop there. He zoomed out and focused on the issue DHS hoped would never reach a public hearing: the quiet decision to send civil immigration detainees, not criminals, not terror suspects, to Guantanamo Bay, a site historically reserved for the most extreme national security cases. And when Peters presented the cost comparison, the absurdity became undeniable. 87 detainees, hundreds of empty beds, nearly $100,000 per person per day, all while U.S. facilities designed for exactly this purpose cost roughly $165 a day. You don't need an ideological lens to see the problem. Common sense does the job. So Peters confronted Noem with the expectation any reasonable official should meet: provide the evidence that led to such an extraordinary decision. The justification, the accounting, the data. But she didn't have any. Not with her. Not accessible. Not ready. And when elected leaders can't defend the basic financial footprint of their own policies, it raises a deeper question. Were these decisions grounded in strategy, or something else entirely? Then came the moment that cut through everything. Peters invoked Section 872 of the Homeland Security Act, a statute designed explicitly to stop secret reorganizations inside DHS. It's the law that forces transparency. It's the law meant to ensure Congress, and by extension the public, isn't blindsided by internal power shifts. And it's the law Noem simply didn't follow. No advance notice. No 60-day warning. No explanation before firing or right-sizing entire divisions, including the office responsible for civil rights and civil liberties. That's not a procedural oversight. That's structural damage. Because when you eliminate watchdogs quietly, you aren't reforming. You're removing guardrails. You're removing the very people who exist to keep government grounded in constitutional values. That's not right-sizing. That's hollowing out the architecture of accountability. And Peters knew it. His questions didn't come from frustration. They came from concern. A constitutional concern. A democratic concern. A concern that once these protections are dismantled, it takes years, sometimes decades, to rebuild them. This is what real oversight looks like. It's methodical. It's informed. And it refuses to accept a world where agencies operate without transparency, simply because someone thinks it makes their job easier. Peters closed with a reminder our era desperately needs. In a democratic republic, you don't get to bend the rules because they're inconvenient. You don't get to treat federal law like a suggestion. Congress exists as a check. And when a secretary forgets that, it's not a disagreement. It's a danger. Today, Peters didn't just question Noem. He re-anchored the conversation to the rule of law. And in a time where political noise often drowns out substance, that kind of clarity isn't just refreshing, it's essential.